plus side, I have to say that she does sound like Lauren Bacall, so that was pretty cool. If I could ask you to turn off your cell phones, please, so we don't interrupt our speaker. And I just have a few announcements. Next Friday's forum is Congressman Blumenauer, who will be talking about accessing tsunami relief efforts, a report from his trip to Southeast Asia. Our monthly book club will be meeting again on February 28th at 7:15 in the City Club Commons, our office just over here at 9th and Washington. We're reading the book, Jane Jacobs' classic, The Death and Life of Great American Cities. And usually we have copies to sell in the back, so I assume there are some copies there to acquire. If not, we have them at the club. We are conducting a membership drive right at the moment. And for all of our new members, they're entered into a drawing for a package of Oregon memorabilia, which includes some CDs from Pink Martini, some vintage Viewmaster slides, all packaged in a Red Ryder wagon. So, or a, what are they? Red Flyer wagon. Red Ryder was the BB gun. So please, this is a great time to introduce new friends to the City Club and get them to join during this membership drive. As always, details of all the many events we have, too numerous to mention here from the podium, are available on our website at www.pdxcityclub.org. And also, audio CDs and videotapes of today's programs are available. Our sponsors this quarter are Nike, Portland General Electric, and Preston Gates and Ellis, LLP. Would you please join me in thanking our sponsors? Our program today is Senate Stories, Tales from the State Legislature, with our Senate President Peter Courtney. And I've been asked to discard the page of biographical information I have on Peter and simply introduce him. So with that, I will introduce Peter. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. That's one of the shortest introductions I've ever had. And I wasn't prepared for it because I'm trying to put my remarks together here. And so I'm a little, I could have at least said, give the date, my date of birth. I mean, I want to feel like there's some feeling of need for what I'm going to say here today. But obviously, with that kind of introduction, I don't feel much warmth right now here. Not that any of you really care. Mr. Van Umesen's over there. This is true. I just came in. I drove all the way up to Salem just to do this, but I'm going to drive all the way back, which means I'm going to go into the Twilliger Curves twice just to be with you. Twilliger Curves are, I don't like the Twilliger Curves. So I came in and he stood up, he said, I'm George Van Umensen. Yes, I see you. I see you, and he introduced me to his table. And then he said, Peter, do good today. You don't have to use all your time. That's what he just said to me moments ago before I came up here. So between this introduction, which was the shortest I've ever had, and Mr. Van Umesen's remarks, I might just sit down right now on all of you and not feel a bit guilty about it. So that individual in that blue long-sleeve shirt is just sort of giving me a slide. I have had nothing to eat. I haven't anything to eat. I haven't. I had a glass of water, and also I gave my meal to another person who's sitting in the back row. And he's got my ticket, so he's going to have my luncheon. It's the kind of full-service person I am. I'm going to read to you something that's totally not true. I was reading out of your program here, Mr. President-elect. Tales from the State Legislature. President Peter Courtney will regale you with tales from the State Legislature from intriguing historical facts about the founding of the Oregon Legislature to present-day discussions of pressing state issues. That is simply not true. It's not true. I'm not going to do that because I just don't feel like doing it. And I want to tell you another thing. There is a person who called me recently from the greater Portland area because of what I did on ballot measure or the Dorothy English bill. just furious with me. And then she proceeded to say, you know, I like Peter, but she asked the person at the other end of the phone in my office, why doesn't he wear long sleeve shirts? That's a very personal thing. It's how I dress. I mean, Doug's wearing long sleeve water shirt. What do you give me? What do you got? I don't want the water. It's too late for the water. And I don't wear long sleeve shirts. And I know you're supposed to wear long sleeve shirts in the winter and the fall. That's the fashionable thing to do, plus you can be cold. And it made me very self-conscious. There's a reason I don't wear long sleeve shirts. And maybe or maybe not during the course of my presentation, I'll tell you what it is. But I've been wearing what I call sneakers. I do wear sneakers because they make my feet feel good. Because when you get to be my age, you hurt all the time. And one of the ways you deal with pain is to sometimes do things with your clothing. And so I didn't want to come up here with my sneakers, so I did go to a more formal shoe. I'm used to wearing shoes for this presentation. That's absolutely true. As soon as I get through here and I get back in my car, back at Smart Park, on the 50,000th floor I had to park on, I'm going to go to my sneakers. Now, when I was sworn in as president, I was very scared. And I'm still scared because I think to be a presiding officer of the Senate or the House is not only a hard job, it's an impossible job. I can't blame anybody because I ran for the office and it happened. But one of the things that struck me on opening day is you give a speech over in the Senate side, and then you come over in the House and the Senate meet with the governor and the judiciary. And basically, it's a remarkable moment, whether you like any of us or not. Because here you are gathered in the House chamber in a very special way. The governor gives a speech. And one of the things I told everyone there is that what you may not know or even care about, but it is part of our great history of this great state, is that way back before we became a state in 1859, actually in 1843, 1859 is when it became a state, but 1843, down the road here in a piece, at Champoeg, when the settlers, you know all about Champoeg, got together, they used to rule themselves by wolf committees. And the reason they did is that back in those days, the wolf, as well as the mountain lion, as they called them panthers and others, were destroying their livestock. And so the only reason they had this committee was to deal with the wolf, which is interesting as we talk here today. But one day back then, in May of 1843, this group of individuals got together and they elected a 9-person legislative body. 9-person. That was in 1843, well before it became a state. And that body came back to the settlers in 1845. We're still not a state. And that legislative body, 9 members, created a judicial branch and an executive branch. And of course, as you know, in 1859, we became a state. I want you to hold that thought, because as I told my fellow legislators who didn't even know it, we came first. Your legislature came first, for better or worse, before the executive and before the judiciary, before we even became a state. Another thought, even though this isn't the same thing as the legislature, this is a week that we celebrated the birthday on Monday of Oregon, because Oregon was founded on Valentine's Day, as you well know, February 14th. 1859. But this week, we also celebrated the 200th anniversary of Lewis and Clark. Isn't it fascinating about Lewis and Clark? There was this guy, I'm not going to talk to you much about Lewis and Clark, because I always like to know the rest of the story. There was a guy named Thomas Jefferson who was obsessed with the rest of the continent. Jefferson wanted to explore and explore and explore. And long before Jefferson became the president, he tried to talk an individual named George Rogers Clark in 1783. Jefferson becomes president in 1801. In 1783, he says George was an American Revolutionary War hero who had fought on the Western Front, if you will, of the American Revolution. Everybody thinks there was only an Eastern Front. There was a Western Front of the American Revolution. And George tells him, there's no way you can pay me enough. And George says, Thomas, I'm not doing it. Just so you know, George Rogers Clark was the older brother of William Clark. Some 3 years later, Thomas Jefferson is over in France. As you know, Thomas went everywhere. He's the minister to France for this country. And they had this American over there named John Ledyard. Now, Ledyard was one of these professional explorers, but he wasn't American. And so Thomas talks him into going around over there to Russia, get a water package, land someplace in the North American continent on the Pacific side. They didn't call it Pacific at the time, and to go west to east. Well, Ledyard takes off. He walked from Stockholm around the Gulf of Bothnia to St. Petersburg. He hitchhiked, he canoed across Siberia. Things were going well. He's 200 miles from the water, and he gets arrested as a spy. They take him back to Poland and say, don't you ever again set foot in this country. Thomas Jefferson struck out again. But Jefferson continues. The American Philosophical Society he was a member of. He's back in the country in 1793, and they got a guy named André Michaux. He's a Frenchman, but he's a botanist. Now remember, Jefferson wanted to explore, not just for political reasons, but Jefferson was a scientist. Botany, geography, geology. It was all part of what Jefferson was. André Michaux was a botanist. They talk him into him, they give him some money, he takes off. There's only one trouble. He gets near the Mississippi, and they figure out that he's in cahoots with the French government to stop all Spanish settlements west of the Mississippi. It falls apart for the third time. Now, I got to tell you something that amazes me about Thomas Jefferson. If this guy was all so bent up on this exploration, to this day, I do not know why Thomas Jefferson did not lead what we now call the Lewis and Clark's expedition. I don't understand it. He finally becomes president, and this is the point I want to make to you, in 1801. In 1803, he sends a secret message to Congress, i.e. a legislative body. I don't know how you send a secret message to Congress. But historians, more than one, that's what they say. In 41 days, Jefferson had his answer. They allocated $2,500 to Meriwether Lewis and William Clark to start what today we call the Lewis and Clark's expedition, an expedition that cost a total of $38,000. But it was the Congress, after 3 strikes you're out, Thomas, that got us the Lewis and Clark's expedition. And please remember, as I said Monday, without that expedition, I wouldn't be here today. Because I don't think Oregon would look like it does today. There would not be probably a state capital where it is today, and surely there would not be that kind of legislative body. Now, you need to know something. What have I been leading up to? I'm making this pitch to you because you're the City Club of Portland, the great City Club of Portland. You have heard me say before that as I speak to you today, you really only have 2.5, maybe less, branches of government in the state of Oregon. Your legislative branch no longer exists as you think it does. It is no longer equal to the executive or the judicial branch. It is no longer able to function as it was designed to. All this talk about 3 separate branches of government, check and balances, it no longer exists in the great state of Oregon today. The legislative branch, term limits, double majorities, brutal campaigns, the initiative process, the role of the lobby, and I could go on, has been badly wounded and hurt and created almost in a way that is no longer even functioning in the last 15 years. You may not think this is serious. Please remember what I told you going back to our history and to Thomas. It was a legislative body that started first, that is very American, that is very integral to how we govern ourselves. As imperfect and as disgusting at times as you may think that, it is a fact. In 1960, this great state, with its legislature, had a commission study its operation. And in that commission, they came up with recommendations, many of which were approved. House electronic voting system, Senate tape recording system, et cetera, et cetera. But many recommendations were not approved, i.e. a constitutional amendment to go to annual sessions. Long overdue, in my humble opinion, in this state. The Speaker and I went to her some months ago, and I asked her, we're going to do it, create a public commission on your Oregon legislature of 30 members. We are in the process of putting that together. so they can study our operations this session as well as the interim and come back to the '07 session on ways and recommendation to rehabilitate, to rebuild that institution, which I think is so critical to how we govern. But there is more. On that opening day at some time, I talked about some other concerns I had for this great state before I get to specific issues that this session faces. The two biggest issues that concern me most, or at least as much as the destruction or the inability of the legislature to govern, are the divides that are going on in this state on geographic lines and generational lines. I am deeply, deeply concerned. I am 61 years old. I can say these things now. I couldn't have said them 10 years ago, nor would I have dared to. Even today, as I talk to you and make eye contact with some of you, I'm worried about what I'm going to say because I'm not convinced that I know that I'm not that smart. I know that I'm slow. But I believe only with years does wisdom come. And I wish my grandmother was still alive to tell me if I am now able to talk like I have wisdom. I don't know. But be that or may, I've already qualified what I'm going to say. The opening day, I told my fellow senators, look around, look at the committee structure. If you will look at the committee structure of the Senate alone, the chairs and the vice chairs and the makeup, all the way to the subcommittees of Ways and Means, you will see a mix of rural and urban, big city, suburban, and small town. And there was a reason for that. It's a very conscious reason that was done. It took us 6 weeks. It took me 13 drafts. It was an unbelievable experience. It was deliberate and it was intentional. Because I can tell you there are strong feelings throughout this state on these lines. But let me tell you something else that I'm so very proud of as I stand before you today. For the first time in the history of this great state in 146 years, this is the 73rd biennial session. We meet every other year. That's why we say biennial. During the session, Senate committees, and I believe House committees too, have gone out and will go out, each committee at least twice, some 3 times, not for town hall meetings. Oh, no, 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 no. Nothing against town hall meetings. They, as recently as last night in Ashland, the Rules Committee conducted public hearings on specific pieces of legislation. And they will, at least the second time around, literally in these communities, vote out of their committees, according to Senate rules, pieces of legislation. Thus far, we have been in Ashland, Coos Bay, Hillsborough, Hood River, Newport, Roseburg, and Tigard. I am on the Health Policy Committee of the Senate. Very unusual for a presiding officer to put him or herself on a standing committee. My committee will go to Ashland and Bend. And our Judiciary Committee will go to Pendleton to deal with meth. The turnout at these meetings has been unbelievable. Unbelievable. For not only do we have them out, we choose places in those communities which make sense in terms of a piece of legislation. I.e., if you're going to talk about a school issue, you conduct the hearing in a school. Up to now, it's okay. We'll see how this works. But the point is the geography, because not only has it had effect on the communities, you know who's affected I'm finding it on? I have state senators come in my office and say, Peter, I never realized. Senators who are different than where the area they go to. The generational divide. This one hurts me perhaps most. I'm married late in life. Marge and I have 3 boys, 22, 19, and 17, who don't do anything we tell them to do. I teach at Western Oregon University. Last night, I PA announced all the men's and women's basketball games. Last night, I announced the Western Oregon men's game against St. Martin's. So there's this constant dealing I'm having, at least with those generations. And it bothers me. Every generation has its own culture, its own peculiarities. Every generation. And it should be. But it brings a tear to my heart to feel some of the animosity and the angst that's out there. I told my senators in the day, opening day after I was chosen, on this floor today there are members of the silent generation, the baby boomer generation, and the Generation X. And I named each senator, let them know which one they were in. I particularly found it interesting to note those of us in the silent generation. I don't know why they called us silent. But I told him something else, that when you look at the members on this floor today, there's some who've just had baby daughters and sons, as well as some are taking care of that parent who's in a perhaps assisted living facility. Just weeks ago, I buried my mother-in-law, Margie's mother, St. Mary's Church over in Mount Angel, and I had to give the eulogy. She's 92 years old, but she got to stay in that tiny little house on Alder Street where she took care of those 6 children and Mr. Brennan for 60 years. And I said, when you add those generations, we have 5 generations on this floor. Let us never forget that. That is part of our mission too. All right. Now I'm going to talk to you about some issues that I feel strongly about. Just moments ago, I left my office. There is one piece of legislation that I don't talk much about. Most people know you don't talk to Peter about this very much. You don't mess with him on this. It's called Senate Bill 1. Senate Bill 1. Senate Bill 1 involves mental health parity. Now, I'm just going to tell you this. We've never been able to get to mental health parity in the great state of Oregon. The state hospital in Salem, that's my legislative district, has not been expanded on one side of the road since 1954. It has not been dealt with since 1954. And yet, since 1983, we have constructed or expanded 12 prisons for adult felons and 10 for children, a total of 22, and there's 4 more on the drawing boards. As I speak to you, the number of individuals on the PSRB, the Psychiatric Security Board, that are going into the forensic units in Salem, we're supposed to be 1 a month. It's now 6 to 10 a month. I could go on and on about our state and mental health. And you know something? I told you a little bit about history, whether you believe it or not, in Champooey. But you know what's interesting about Champooey and our settlers? When they got together, whether the Wolf committees or that legislative committees, they said they wanted their government. Everybody says, what's government for? What do you say? They said they wanted a government for 3 reasons. Now, I know all of you are going to guess at least 2 of them, but you would never guess the 3rd one, because I couldn't guess it until 6 months ago after some research, and I stumbled across it through my great work of Brian Shipley, one of my staff. They wanted roads, transportation. That made sense. We call it public safety. That makes sense. I don't know what they called it back then. And you know what the other thing was? They had insane members of their family. That's what they said. And they wanted to deal with that. Stop and think about that. Before we became a state of Oregon, the settlers were talking about mental health. I don't make this up. You do the research. And yet today, this state, mental health, is in a crisis that it's unbelievable. If the federal courts or any courts got a hold of us, we would be placed on a judicial watch just like that. We will await the study that's being done. Draft, we hope, on May 2nd. And then we hope on May 16th, thereabout, the master plan, which will start us down the road of how this state, this great, wonderful state, can deal with an issue that even our forefathers and mothers and our settlers talked about even before we came a state. You're going to think I'm doing this for political reasons, but it's not fair. In 2001, I introduced with others 5 bills. Now get this, 2001, on what I call the quake. I'm not a geologist. I'm not one of those engineers that knows how to talk about slides and earthquakes. I'm a social scientist, and a pretty poor one at that. I don't do natural or physical science well at all. But somehow they put me on this seismic commission. I to this day don't know why, but I took it serious. We introduced 5 bills. Not only did they pass, but 2 of the bills put on a November 2002 ballot, because you voted on it, the authority to bond up to $1 billion to retrofit schools, colleges, universities, hospitals, police and fire stations. in order to get ready for Mother Nature's earthquake. I said earthquake, which is coming to Oregon in the magnitude of 9 to 9.5. I said 9 to 9.5. The earthquake that hit in the spring break in 1993 was 5.6 to 5.7. The tsunami that just hit Asia was less than 9. The magnitude of that quake today would obliterate every school in Portland. The death toll in Oregon State alone could be as high as 25,000, depending upon whether it hit during the day or at night. I could go on and on and on. This state is filled. It's filled with faults. The quake of 93 was the Mount Angel fault. But what you got to know, the one that's coming, is off the coast, Cascadia subduction zone, discovered only 15 to 18 years ago, stunned the world, hit us 300 years ago. That, when it goes, the wave that will be unleashed will be much bigger than the one that hit Asia. It will travel at 400 to 500 miles an hour. Do you know what that kind of wave could do to the coast of Oregon today? I'm not making this up. The wave will reach Japan. The wave will reach Japan, and it did 300 years ago. In the legislature today, there are bills to allocate $1.5 to $2 million to do seismic studies on all those public buildings, because before you retrofit, you have to know. Because some of the buildings we should not retrofit. We should simply phase them out. This is serious. I don't bring this up because of South of Asia and what happened there. But that was a reminder of the destruction of a tsunami. You must remember, I've also talked to you about earthquakes, because what happened in 93 was not off the coast. It was right here, Mount Angel. And in fact, in a sentimental way, the church I was married in, my boys were baptism in, and I just married my mother-in-law in, St. Mary's Catholic, was shut down. As was the grade school that my wife went to and had to be torn down and started all over again. The state capitol, the House chamber I was serving in, was shut down for 2 months, 15 more seconds, and you know what would have happened to the rotunda. You've heard it all. The whole thing would have come in. And yet, to this day, we have not retrofitted the state capitol to the extent we should if it's going to take a hit on that magnitude. All right. There are many other things I could talk about. I talked to you about mental health. I talked to you about the tsunami. I've talked to you about the condition of the Oregon Legislature. I find it interesting, a bill that I think is rather significant. Just earlier this week, we introduced a bill on toxic zones in the Willamette River. I don't expect that to get passed, but I find it remarkable. As I believe, as human nature treats Mother Nature will treat human nature. If human nature takes care of Mother Nature will take care of human nature. But lo and behold, if human nature trashes Mother Nature plays the last card every single time. If you ignore her warnings, her storms will destroy you or us or our property. If you trash it in certain ways, you do away with those things which you cherish the most. In so many ways, Mother Nature can allow you to build your recreation, your economy, and your spirit. And what a state. When I came here so many years ago, I didn't know what I was doing. I was alone, living in the YMCA in Salem, and everything was in Rhode Island and West Virginia for me. Only Oregon taught me about Mother Nature. I was 26, but only Oregon taught me about Mother Nature. All the way now to the earthquake. And yet, isn't it interesting that this state, in some ways, has forgotten that? There is no other state quite like your Oregon when it comes to Mother Nature. I'm not going to bore you further. I was going to talk about your history and this fountain down here. I had done all this wonderful research. I was going to tell you a little about your history, some of those stories you didn't know. And then the good President-elect says, I know all that. I checked at a table over here, the young man looking right at him, he says, oh, I know all that. I don't like to bore people. So there goes a whole part of my speech. Mr. Van Homesen, makes you happy. Whole thing. I love to do history, and I love to surprise people. Not. So let me conclude with this. I was here 2 years ago because you asked 9 other people, and they couldn't show up for that speech. And I'm sure the number was the same this time, Mr. President. I even gave you a token of my love, a pin of Oregon, which one of the young men came in here to show me. You gave me this 2 years ago, and I suggested I'm not going to give you anything more. I thought about bringing you things today, but I'm afraid to give you anything. You can understand why. I'm afraid to take anything. That's why I'm afraid to eat a meal. I'm afraid to give anything. But I'm going to ask for your help, because we're in it together. I have immense respect for the great city club of Portland. I'm not from here. I've never been from here. I will never live here. It's just not the way it is. It's not the way the cards played out in my life. I'm very sentimental about where I live. It's in Salem, on the river, a tiny little house, North Salem. But I know civic pride, and I know public service and public interest when I see it. I can feel it, and it's here. Need your help to help bring the generations together. There's quite a few generations here today, my friends. Oh, yes, there are. You see, you look a lot like the state Senate in some ways. In fact, I'm not so sure that on this floor there might not literally be 4 generations, and I know I'll get to 5, and I may get to 6 if I got into your personal lives. Oh, yeah, it's here. Oh, yeah. I'm looking at grandmothers and grandfathers. Oh, yeah. I bet 1 or 2 had a baby just recently. That whole new generation. I should be looking through here. I forgot the latest generation. It's here. There's 5 to 6 generations on this floor alone. I'm going to ask you to help with that geographic divide. I know I did that 2 years ago, but I'm going to tell you something. In your own creative ways, you'll figure out how to do that. Because this cannot be done just by that side of the mountains or Portland or whatever. Either we see it as one or we don't get there. I'm going to ask for your help to get ready for Mother Nature. But I'm also going to ask for your help to respect Mother Nature, take care of Mother Nature. It's both ways. Get ready for Mother Nature, because she's coming. She's not evil because she's coming, but that's the way it is. But she's coming to help me get ready for Mother Nature, but also I'm going to ask you to help me take care of Mother Nature. Nothing else, because it's in our human nature's best interest. That's my opinion. If you don't agree, fine, and I don't hunt or fish, but I just know that so many people do, as well as so many other things. I've watched Salem, my community, who had its back turned to the great Willamette River, has turned around and embraced that river. So many things. You know, the animals, they know what's in the river. They know. We don't have to tell them. We don't. We can look at it, we can't tell it, but they know. I'm going to ask you to help me feel about the mental health as the way we do physical health. I'm going to ask you to please help me bring Oregon to a position that they look at the health of our minds the same way they do at the health of our bodies. Years ago, when my mother was so sick with Parkinson's disease, in fact, I never knew my mother when she didn't have Parkinson's disease. Neither did my brothers and my poor father, or my poor grandmother helped raise me. My grandmother raised me along with the Franciscan nuns, and I'm not going to go Catholic on you if you're all worried about that. But they helped raise me. But my grandmother, God rest her soul, and those Franciscan nuns used to say to me, healthy body, healthy mind, healthy mind, healthy body. It's one and the same thing. It's another reason that I just slip in a bill I have on PE in grades K through 8. I won't get that bill passed, but I'm going to tell you something. The total body, mental health parity. Finally, I'm going to ask you to help me on something that I guess I'm too sentimental about, and I admit it to all of you. It's how I started my remarks today, and you've been very kind to even listen to me. Let me come here and rant and rave. I'm going to ask you to help me with this legislative branch. I'm going to ask you to help me understand the magnitude if I'm all right. Even if I'm all right, I didn't say totally right. I've never felt right about anything, Doug. Or at least not totally right. That branch needs attention. and it needs help. You're the kinds of individuals who have the kind of appreciation for Oregon, its infrastructure, and public service. Great City Club of Portland, with your help and a few others, you know something, we can take care of Mother Nature, we can take care of mental health, we can take care of our structures, and Oregon, my Oregon, will sing again. Thank you very much. Yeah. I had a thought. I was supposed to take questions, and so what I thought I'd do is I'd ask myself the questions. That's what I'm going to do. I know I'm misbehaving. I actually had planned to do that, but you know I can't believe it. You're supposed to let the applause die down for the sake of me. Instead, individuals are racing up here, I'm sure, to ask me brutal and unfriendly questions. Now, do I just stand here, or do you do something?
I do something.
So what? Do I sit down now and have a cook? What do I?
Have a drink. There's a Sprite there.
Am I leaving? You're all coming up here like.
I'm going to introduce Gwen, who will ask you the first question.
Oh, I see.
But first, Peter Courtney was first elected to the Oregon State Senate in 1998.
That's good, Doug.
Thank you. Time for questions. Questions are a privilege for City Club members. The first question will be asked by Gwen Milius, our board host today. Gwen is a partner with Stuvia Milius Identity Management and is a co-founder of the City Club's New Leaders Council. So, Gwen?
Senator Courtney, thank you very much for your comments. You did outline a number of issues that you care deeply about, but I'm going to crank it up a notch for you. Governor John Kitzhaber at this very podium said that every politician should have an issue for which they're willing to lose an election. Given how difficult your job has been, you may be wishing to lose that election sooner rather than later. But provided that you stick around and help us out, do you have an issue for which you'd be willing to lose an election, and what is it?
I don't. Everything I touch, I could lose an election over. I don't know. You heard me talk about mental health. I don't know. Do you lose an election over mental health? I don't know. It's a mandate, insurance companies and hospitals. I don't know. I don't like the death penalty. How's that? That make you feel better? I don't like the death penalty. I don't know. Is that okay? I mean, I have voted. I got to tell you something, folks. There isn't any of the issue. I'm the most veteran member of the Oregon Legislature. I'm not bragging to you. I'm it. When you combine my experience on the judiciary committees and in the House and the Senate, it's my 20th year. I have voted on every issue, every social issue. And if you look, folks, I don't come from Portland. Don't take that wrong. I come from Salem, Jervis, Woodburn. That's my district. And whether you know it or not, maybe you think it's just down the road, and so it's the same. It is not the same. And if you look at my voting record in my district and the makeup of it, when I get up in the morning, I'm taking a chance. So, but the death penalty, let's just say the death penalty. I don't like the death penalty. And I had to tell that to one of my colleagues, who you know well over a bill that she feels very strongly about. I said, don't do that to me. I don't know what you're going to do to me. I'm tempted sometimes the death penalty. I get weak. You know what it involves? You hurt a kid. You torture, kill a kid, I get messed up. I get messed up. Then I start to say, and then I say, no, Peter, it's still wrong. But I'm just being frank with you. So I guess death penalty, at least in terms of my district, that's dangerous stuff. That help? Okay.
Tom Cox, City Club member, I want to thank you for your many sacrifices in coming here today.
Oh, yeah, here we go. Tom, you're right.
That may be the last time I ever hear that from you, but thank you.
Okay.
The governor put out December a terrific budget based on 10 principles. And my research is that will only work if the legislature adopts those principles in its committee structure or maps those principles to existing committees. Has the Senate done that, or is the Senate planning to do that to support the governor's vision for his new budget process?
You said Governor who? What did you say? I'm serious. What was your opening remark to me? It's put out. Who put out?
The governor.
No, we have not. With the governor's principles, you're talking about the principles of government, POG, that. No, we're not ignoring it. Our governmental process. which is legislative physical office, as you well know. Ken Rocco has been working with our Ways and Means members. I believe if you look at the Ways and Means members that I appointed, the 10 of them, I did it proportionality, 6 and 4. I think you understand what I'm saying in terms of try to be fair. Some people say it's the most extraordinary committee they've ever seen on Ways and Means in terms of the Senate side, and all I'm going to say is that their job is to go in there, recognizing what's happened on 28 and 30 and the climate that's out there, the governor's budget, and to try to craft budgets working with the Speaker in the House and the governor, like I just spoke to the Speaker yesterday, to see if we can bring about a budget that reflects where Oregon needs to be and the programs and services Oregon wants. And I'm not trying to blow you off, I'm just telling you that. The 10 principles I haven't got to memorize, but this Principles of Government thing, there's a book on it. I'm not going to knock it. You know, I've heard 4 presentations on it. You got to understand, you're a great budgeteer. You do know numbers. That's your life, right? That's the kind of guy you are, right? That's what you feel, right? Right?
You're trying to pin me
Say
down.
right.
Hallelujah.
Right, all right. Okay. You understand me about budgets. I look at budgets in terms of how much money I got, how important is a program and service, essential services, and then I got to start sweating rocks. And that's what drives me. But I talked to the co-chair today, but the answer specifically is no. I haven't said adopt the governor's 10 principles. It's like I don't say adopt the governor's budget. He knows that. So no, I haven't done that, and I'm not going to do that. I do think he had a very, well, wait. I'm not knocking the governor. He did a great job on December 1. His job was to put together a budget to give him the resources he had. And I mean that. He knows I'm coming for his budget. But he also knows, as I know, that I can't get a budget without him. So there's this, remember I told you at the beginning, I talked about the 3 branches of government? This is an example the legislature can stand and deliver. But there are people that feel strongly about these principles. I don't know what it's Principles of Government. What was who wrote, Pete, yeah, you got the book. Yeah, I've heard 4 presentations by him. And we're working at it, but we're not that close. So I have to disappoint you. I don't want any more questions because you're going to beat me up. I'm just kidding.
Hi, Carol Witherell, City Club member. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for thanking me.
What, in your view, would be a high level of commitment to a quality public education for all youth in our state within the legislature? What would that high level of legislative commitment
You asked me how much money? All right, I'll just tell you this.
Yeah.
This I wish it wasn't done because I just recognized members of the press are in here, and this got me worried. Because now I'm going to misbehave. But if I talk fast enough, you'll understand it, but they won't. We're not getting out of Salem with just $5 billion for K through 12. I'm just telling you that. That's not going to happen. Not because Peter said it wasn't going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Now, I'm not going to tell you the amount today because I'm not that good. And that wouldn't be fair. Because a week from today, we're getting a forecast. Now, this is where I get in trouble. Because I'm going to tell you what I think's in the forecast right now. But I'm telling you this, Carol, I know a little bit more than I'm supposed to know. There's $60 million already in the bank on the forecast. It could be as high as $100 million up. Having said that, the Supreme Court, sooner or later, is going to talk to us on PERS and MUPL. Now, MUPL is simply where we went and took money that was supposed to go back in the kicker, and people are saying we can't take it. My point to you is those decisions could put us in serious trouble in terms of what's money available. But there's more. You heard about the line games. Best case scenario on line games, whether you like them or not, if they go into effect by July 1, given this, you just heard from Dale Penn, Lottery Commission, he wants the take you get from bars and things, instead of being 29 to 32, would only be 15%. You understand what I'm saying? The amount of money that would give us is 30 to 60 million. That's on out there. The thing about that is, 07, 09, that amount just goes right through the ceiling when you get into the line games if the take is 15%. That has not been approved yet by the Lottery Commission, but I'm not through. And I'm not saying we're going to do this, City Club of Portland. Where's Mr. Cox? What happened to him? He left. Oh, he is back there. You know, the governor wants a rainy day fund and reserve, a lot of other people too do. We have an education reserve fund. By July 1, there's $200 million in that fund. Now, I'm not telling you we're going to take money out of that fund. We could. We did it in the special sessions, and we did it in the last session. I know they looked at their clock. I got to give them a good, this is a City Club answer. You give City Club answers are different than regular answers. But I'm telling you, we're not going to get out there for 5. But even if we did, the system to me is broken another way, and nobody talks about it. Senate Bill 38 I introduced in 2001, got it out of the Senate, died in the House. If you were to do this state right, you would have no 4A high schools in this state, in my opinion. No 4A high schools. All the research shows the size of our high schools at 4A is too big. Everybody talks about class size. The schools are too big. Now, there's also an optimum size for middle schools and elementary schools. We do better there, much better. High schools, the vast majority of our kids are in 4A high schools. Even though when you look at the total number of schools in 1, 2, and 3A, there's more, our kids are in these mammoth high schools. So you say, I think you were asking me a monetary question, but there's even a bigger issue going on. So I tried to answer it in the short time I have as you look at your watch, Quinn and Doug. You know how distracting that is to be talking and someone's doing this? I mean, how do you think I feel? I haven't looked at my watch one time as I was talking to you. For all I know, I should be doing this too. I want to go home, I want something to eat. And you people up here looking at your watch. Carol, that's the best I can do, because I'm distracted.
It was terrific. Thank you.
What the hell is going on over here? What is this? What time's it over, Tom? Because I can't read. You don't care. Okay, yes, please.
Chris Smith, City Club member, and just so you know, I'm a trailing edge boomer, and I don't wear long sleeve shirts either.
Oh, thank you.
I want to talk about the dysfunction of the legislature. One of the devastating impacts of term limits was that we had revolving door leadership in both chambers. And I think this is the first session since maybe Vera Katz's time that we've had the same leadership in both the Senate and the House. And my question is that helping?
That's a very good question. I had a meeting with the speaker a half an hour yesterday. We get along very well. I think Karen knows that you'll never see me say anything in public about her. I didn't do it last session, her or the governor. I don't do that. I respect where she's coming from. She's got difficult issues in her building. I got different issues in my side. It's too early to tell. We don't want a long session. We understand what that does to the legislature as an institution. Sure, the Democrats will blame the Republicans, the Republicans will blame the Democrats, but if you talk to people, their eyes glaze over. We don't want a long session. But I can't tell you right now. She'll call me all the time. I talk to her. We see each other. We have a very good working relationship, but I just can't tell you right now. Because in the end, she's got to deal with her life, and I got to deal with my life. You have relationships in your life, don't you? Should we talk about this? Let me tell you. Sometimes you can't act just the way you want to because of other forces and sources. So we'll see how this plays out. I'm not trying to be vague, but I have to be vague because it's so early. I'm scared. I admit it to you. I'm nervous. I'm worried. But it's not because I don't know Karen and she doesn't know Peter. It's just because this outside thing can really come into play. Because, you know, the Democrats control the Senate, but the Republicans control that House. Let's not play games. And the governor is there, too. And he has very strong opinions on a lot of things. And we got to figure out a way to get together. So I don't know today. I wish maybe you asked me that on today's what's the date, Doug? Ask me that. I can't answer it on the 18th of February at 1:06. But thank you for the question. It's a very good question. Thank you. That's like now you've ruined my day because I'm worried now more. Okay, I'm done with you. Thank you. Jesus.
Jim,
yes, please, yes. Not that I don't want to listen to you, just that sometimes I drift. Go ahead.
All right, we're with you. Jim Zarin, City Club member. You mentioned obviously the legislature and the word initiative. Right. You weren't born here like a lot of us weren't. You've been here a long time like a lot of us have who love this place and think that the initiative process seems to be helping drag us down to the abyss, which is sort of public anarchy to make basic public policy decisions. There are good historical reasons why it was created, but
right.
In the current age, seems to be not a real great system for our future. What would you do if you were the king about initiative?
I have introduced some bills to change it a bit, but I must tell you something, sir. That's part of how we govern ourselves, and I have to tell you, I don't think it's going to change much, because as you know, it would take the public to change it constitutionally, as you point out. But let me just tell you something that's come to me, again, because I'm 61. Thank you for some body language, because I looked at you for a reason. Ballot measure 5, ballot measure 11, ballot measure 37. Ballot measure 5 was 1990. Ballot measure 11 was, I don't know what it was. You can help me with that. And ballot measure 37 was just last year. One dealt with property taxes, one dealt with crime or corrections, and one dealt with land use. You know what my belief is now? In every single one of those, there were signals. There were signals. There were signals that we were, whether you like it or not, that the public was getting to a point. Sir, we got to get better about signals. I'm serious. There are no surprises. I remember, I tried. I'm not supporting this, Colin, Dana. But when Tony Van Vliet and Courtney got together in 1982 and created House Bill 2001, then referred to as the Space Odyssey Plan. It was a sales tax, but in it, we rolled back the property taxes and we capped them in 1982. Because I'd been in the Salem City Council, I was sensing something then. I didn't even know what I was doing then. Van Vliet did. You know what? No, they'll never do that. And they did it on 5. They stunned us. I'll never forget the vote that night. They stunned us. They had said no, and then they came in and they did it. I could talk to you about land use. Folks, I put together a comprehensive plan in the city of Salem when I was in the Salem City Council. The first plan ever adopted was City of Salem. Urban growth boundaries, a whole bit. But I can go into secondary. I'm not going to go into all of that. And crime and corrections, we got to get better at listening to the warning signs. This process will be okay. We can anticipate that. That's one of the reasons I want annual sessions. I didn't say a full-time legislature, because legislature needs to meet every year. If nothing else, through anticipation, maybe you put a ballot measure out there or you pass a piece of legislation. I think that'll do more to help restore the legislature and us adjust to this initiative process, which is very much a part of Oregon by Oregon. That's the best I can do, sir. Well, why are you running up here like that?
But isn't the problem that the legislature won't act because they figure the initiative will just cut them off at the knees anyway?
Well, what am I going to say? I do think the one thing I didn't say is the referral process. The legislature's been referring too much stuff. And I admit that to you, sir, out of fear, out of whatever. So, yeah, that can happen. But, I countered it with some good things, didn't I? I mean, didn't I sound like I knew something? Well, thank you. Yes, please. Is this the last question? Is he the last one, or is it one after him, Doug? Okay. All right, Doug. Thank you for waiting, by the way, because you've been very patient.
I want to go to ballot measure 37 and the messages that are supposed to be delivered on that. Senate Bill 100 was passed in 1973 to take a big look and to see where we were going and try to focus on what you call natural processes or human nature versus natural processes. Now, somehow in 2001, when ballot measure 7 passed and Max Williams decided to try to put together something, we couldn't come to a consequence of any significance, and the result was ballot measure 37. Okay. In 2003, we had a big look bill before the legislature, and we couldn't take a look at it. What's your prognosis for Senate Bill 82 and the $1 million that would support it, and what can you do about the House Republican caucus in order to get it to perform?
Well, Senate Bill 82 is, I'm going to make sure I'm talking the right thing. Well, let me just tell you something. Senator Ringo heads up my Land Use Environment Committee, and I have said to him, and I've said to others in other speeches I've given, I've told the Speaker, I want the Senate to make a run at 37. Now, when I say make a run at it, I don't mean to overturn it. Everybody got that? No. I may be liberal, but I'm not crazy. To quote the late Henry Scoop Jackson of the state of Washington. There are a lot of things going on right now. We're going to struggle to work very hard to try to deal with 37 with all the players. And I recognize that at any time we could lose it. But there seems to be incredible interest by a lot of parties, real estate industry, development communities, Oregonians in actions, cities and counties, I could go on, that just maybe if we settle down, we need to look at this thing and not let this session end I think we need to do something on 37 before the session signed out. That's the first thing I want to tell you. Good, but you're asking a bigger question. Folks, the public doesn't identify with what happened here in the 70s. It's a new public. They don't have the same feelings. They don't understand the magnitude of what was done back then. They don't understand that. And incredible things we've done back then, as I understand it, sir, even though I hadn't been in state long, to bring support for that incredible thing that was done. Just the concept of an urban growth boundary is unbelievable. We all take that for granted. That's everywhere. No, it isn't everywhere. That's a remarkable concept. But there was tremendous Oregon support, grassroots support. And we got to get that going again. And that is what I think you're also talking about, if I'm not mistaken, sir. And I'm struggling here because I think I'm trying to give you more than you asked for. But I feel a responsibility. I also have to look at the ins and outs of 37 as it exists now, because even one side that loves it says there's some problems with it, at least behind closed doors they'll say that. The bigger picture is we got to connect. Remember I told you about the committees going out and things. Now you may think that's just a charade. That's not a charade. We're trying hard, at least the legislature, to connect with Oregon in ways we never have before to try to deal with some of what you're talking about. Great question. That's the best I can do today as I talk to you. You're the last person that will ever ask me a question in this city club, because I can't take this anymore.
At least for this afternoon, in public. Mark Anderson. Back to square one. Senate Bill 1. With 3 basic principles.
Yeah.
So tell me more about what Senate Bill 1 is and wants to do, and 2, how I can, as well as other people can, fulfill the moral duty of the citizens of this state to fulfill the third thing that our predecessors wanted to do, which is to take care of those who need help with mental health.
That's a complicated question. First of all, Senate Bill 1, it's an insurance mandate, sir. It simply says to the insurance industry, right now when you go to a hospital, you see your physicians, as you know, you have insurance. Now, not everything is covered, but a lot of basic things are covered. If you're not trying to spoon feed you and insult your intelligence, but this is the way I have to talk, because health care is so complicated for me to understand the magnitude of it. Basically, now there's the philosophy, except for 35 or 37 states, because they do mandate insurance industries to cover you if you have certain mental health problems. If you get my drift, what I'm saying, you have to see someone for treatment, you have to get certain treatments to deal with your mental illnesses. Up to now, the insurance industry has not said in this great state, we'll cover that, which means it's coming out of your own pocket. And a lot of people, well, I won't get into the mental health issues in terms of what's going on, because it's much more prevalent than a lot of people realize, and it's touching many more lives. And so this bill, Senate Bill 1, would say to the insurance industry, you know, look, what can you do at the club? I don't know. I mean, I think, I meant you to help me is, it's going to come out of the Senate. I don't want to have you just talk to state senators and state reps. I think at this club, I almost wish that the local communities, in terms of their city governments and things, and others would start to speak to this issue, because it's much more than just the legislature's issue. I mean, it isn't. Because if that's all it is, and that's all we do, then we haven't come to grips with what mental illness is in our society. And that's what I'm getting at. You know, we all come to grips with health problems, but health problems don't involve mental illness, it seems to me. Well, it does. So I almost would like to see much broader appeal than just, okay, Senate Bill 1, if passes, fine, everybody can go home. No. So in your everyday lives, there's so many places that we can start to say, we're going to view mental health as we do physical health, as important, and we're going to approach it the same way. You know something, there are remarkable ways that you can treat people, they can live a normal life. Now, I don't think people have any idea the magnitude of what we're able to do if we can get diagnosis and we can get people treated. You know what happened. I left out one issue, and I wish I hadn't because I got to run, but I need help. You know about the individual who came into the Capitol with a knife at his neck and tore up that chamber. My wife was on the floor that time. I was coming, and they physically restrained me to get on there, and he has some mental problems. And I was going to talk to you. I need your help on how I feel about the Capitol and how we handle security in the Capitol, because I don't want to shut down the tabernacle of state government. But I didn't do it with you. It's now being studied, because I think that's sacred stuff too, your Capitol and your access to it. But that day had something to do with mental health. He was crying out. I mean, you know, yesterday in an interview he apologized. He said, I shouldn't have done it, but he's desperate. He's got some mental issues. Other issues. But you know, the magnitude of this, it's a society. It's an evolutionary thing. You know how in your criminal justice system, right? How you view, when you incarcerate people, you don't incarcerate them the same way we used to, right? I mean, we evolved as a civilization. We're not doing with mental illness what we can do. That's all I'm asking for. That's the best I can do with a very complicated, but I thank you for that because that allows me to end on something that, well, everything you've asked me is important, and I want to thank you. You're always very kind to me. You're very good for me. Most of all, you put up with my shenanigans and nonsense, and I'm grateful. Thank you very much.